rocking.
Is this where the damn drumming and the music kicks in?
Yeah.
Going on, everybody? Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing to listen to On the Pipe podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tyler Shepherdson, and today is Wednesday, October the 25th, 2023, years after zero. And this is the first week that we don't have any GNCC racing until next year. Bittersweet to end the season, but I feel like this season was the longest, shortest season ever. There's been so much that has happened. There's been so much, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but there's been a lot of stuff that has happened. All right, 7 different winners in 7 different rounds to start this thing off, and it kind of all just built from there. A lot of stuff went into this season, and there was a lot that we had to digest, a lot that we had to take in, a lot of parity. That's the word I was looking for a second ago. Parity. A lot of parity this year. So like we mentioned, 7 different winners in 7 different rounds. Craig DeLong was the first person to strike twice and get 2 wins, and that was at round number 8. After that, we saw Ben Kelly click off his second year of the win. After that, our second win of the year. After that, we saw Stu kick off his second win of the year. And then Craig DeLong made it 3. And then that led us going into Ironman, which we just got done and dusted with. And we crowned a brand new champion in his second full year in XC1 racing. Craig DeLong went out there and got it done. And man, I got to say, there was a lot that went into the race on Sunday. Obviously, I think that the anticipation, the pressure, the eyes, the attention would have been a lot higher had Stu Baylor not had the catastrophic shock bolt that came out at the Buckwheat 100. So we went into this one with Craig having a little bit of a buffer zone. And so he knew what he had to do to go out there and get the job done. I spoke with Craig quite a bit Saturday night, just kind of talking about where his head was at and what he was thinking, what he was feeling, how he was approaching the weekend. And then also about a bunch of other stuff with him, his girlfriend, his brother, Andrew DeLong, was out there as well. So some cool conversations and just kind of seeing where his head was at going into the Sunday where he very well could be crowned champion, which he ended up getting that crown, earning that crown. But it was also something that we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that people that may have been close to him, talking about folding under pressure, not being able to deal with the pressure, when it came down to it last year. So we saw Craig move up in 2021. He moved up at the last race of the year. It was the Mud Fest at Ironman Raceway, nonetheless, where he went up and got a podium in his first ever career start in the XC1 class. And moving into 2022, last year's first full season in that XC1 class, going into summer break, he saw himself right in the middle of an XC1 championship, an overall GNCC championship. He was right there on the cusp of it. And then coming back after summer break, ran into one big issue, I believe, that first race back after summer break, but ended up fading away from the title contention where Jordan Ashburn would lock that thing up. And the reason I said that is because I don't ever listen to the podcast. I told you guys a couple weeks ago that I actually went back and listened to a few. Well, this past weekend, on my way home from Ironman Raceway, I listened to earlier this very season when we had Craig DeLong on the show. And I think it was right after he got his first career win, which also came this year, in Georgia. And one of the things that Craig talked about himself was the confidence on the whole shot, the confidence to get a good start, the confidence in feeling like he belonged in that XC1 Pro class. And going back and listening to it and hearing where he was at then to know that he is crowned a champion now, I think just shows how fast of a progression Craig DeLong had between moving up to that XC1 class and then winning the title in his second year. Like I said, that title was there for the taking last year, and it didn't work out. And then this whole offseason, he had to think about that. He had to train with that in his mind. He had to go into this season knowing that it was on the cusp of happening last season. And then going into this season, also talking about the confidence, building that confidence up, feeling like he belonged in that XC1 class. Keep in mind, this is earlier this year where Craig DeLong, out of his own mouth on this very podcast, was talking about finding the confidence, coming into his own, feeling like he belonged in that XC1 class, feeling like he deserved to be running up front. He clicked off a win. He clicked off podium positions. He did it with everyone in the field. Nobody was hurt. Nobody was out. Everyone was there, and Craig DeLong was having success. He went throughout the rest of the year building on that success, clicking off another win along the way. Like we mentioned, the only other rider to, or the first rider rather, to win multiple rounds this year. So he started out with a top 5. Second round, he gets on the podium with a third place finish. Third place, he wins. Fourth place, just off the podium. And fifth place, returned back to the podium with a second place finish. Fourth, fifth, comes back, gets the win at round number 8. Sixth, second, and then the win at round number 11. And then seals the deal with Ironman this past weekend. But just seeing that level of progression, Craig was one of the guys that we saw in XC2 for quite some time, and then he won that XC2 championship. But ever since he's moved up, I think he has become a completely different rider, a completely different person. Now, obviously, you get older, you're mature, but then I also think that coming in, racing that front line, being in those situations that he was in last year, being in those situations that he was in this year, and now to be forever in the record books as the GNCC overall champion is absolutely insane. I'm happy for Craig. Happy for that whole family. I mean, that is obviously no easy feat, no easy accomplishment. So congratulations to your 2023 overall GNCC champion, Craig DeLong. So, I did have another thought that I was trying to branch off of there, that I was building the whole thing up, and then it completely slipped my mind. But yeah, he goes out there and wraps up the overall champion. Now, there are some confusions. So a couple weeks ago, we also talked about what if Stu won, theoretically, and Craig DeLong didn't have the best race of his career. And there was a lot of people in that XC1 class. Well, this past weekend, Craig DeLong got 8th place. Stu Baylor got 2nd place. And we're going to talk about the results. We're going to talk about the race here in a minute, but I just want to get this point across. We talked about what would happen if the overall points were different than the XC1 points, and that is when we looked up and saw the rule that XC1 will run congruent with the overall points. That being said, what we discussed did absolutely happen, and there's a bit of that even takes it to a more confusing standpoint than what we initially thought. So if you look at the overall standings, Craig DeLong only had to finish 13th or better. He finished 8th place overall. That means with Stu's 2nd place finish, Craig DeLong wrapped up the overall championship. But if you go back and look at those XC1 points, Stu Baylor actually had more XC1 points than Craig DeLong. So theoretically, if those two championships were distinguished separately, we technically have an XC1 class champion and we have an XC1 overall champion, with them splitting those. And it's kind of weird how that happens. And you ask how it does happen. Well, there was rounds where we only had maybe 6 pro riders, 6 XC1 guys, 7 XC1 guys. And so when you look through the results, Stu might have had a bad race in there, but hold on. I had the overall points pulled up. But with the limited amount of riders in that XC1 class, it kind of limits the that's why. They already corrected the points. So now if you look at the XC1 points, it is also based off of the overall points. So you can't see the breakdown anymore of the XC1 points individually. So, but there was races where like if there was a bad round, like if Stu did have a bad round or Stu DNF'd a round, that his finish was still like 5th or 6th. Like it wasn't terrible because of those the limited amount of people in that XC1 class. This would have been a lot easier if I had the XC1 points before they were revised in front of me, so that way I could explain it and actually sound like I know what I'm talking about. But instead, I'm just going to have to go a roundabout way and tell you what went on. But we talked about what if this could happen 2 years ago when it was Stu and Ben Kelly coming down to the wire, and Stu was penalized heading into that final round. It kind of allowed this same type of situation to come up. And now this year, Stu right in the heart of it again with Craig DeLong. So, yeah, technically, in XC1 class points, Stu Baylor did score more XC1 points, but Craig DeLong did score more overall points. And we're going to talk about that in a second, but Craig DeLong was only one of 2 riders in that XC1 class that even scored in the top 20 at every single round this year, proving that consistency is key. We're going to talk about the second person here in just a little bit. But what makes that more confusing and makes you even come back to it is when you look at the XC2 championship. Liam Draper is a guy that is so deserving of an XC2 championship. He is a guy that has been in that XC2 class. He has been a guy that was on the bubble of losing his last ride because of results, and then he came back, bounced back, saw success, got race wins, got race podiums, signed a new deal coming into this year, and as he mentioned on the podium, he said that he walked into Randy's office and told Randy Hawkins, team manager, the Javelin, that he was the guy. And then he held up those championship number 1 plates, and he said, right here's your proof that I am the guy. So, big congratulations, big shout out to Liam Draper. We are going to talk about that here more in a moment as well. But for the sake of the current rant that we're on, Liam Draper, when you look down in this one, he did win the XC2 title. But then when you look in the overall top 20 points, Angus Reardon, who was second place in the XC2 points battle, is 1 spot ahead of Liam Draper in the overall. So not only do we run into this weird situation where the XC1 points was different than the overall points, where Stu Baylor had more XC1 points but Craig DeLong had more overall points, if you use that same logic and go down to the next pro class, Angus Reardon had more overall points, but Liam Draper had more class points. So I guess it worked out to be even more ironic that the same thing that distinguished the XC1 battle is the same exact thing that happened in the XC2 battle, but it was 2 different results for those 2 different pro classes, and they're both pro classes. They're both premier professional classes. So it kind of seems weird that they're scored different ways. It kind of seems weird that XC1 goes off of the overall, but XC2 goes off of class points, and then every other class that is out there goes off of class points as well. So I don't know, just kind of an interesting anecdote when you look at it. That Craig DeLong, number 1 in the overall, Stu, number 1 in XC1, but then you look at XC2, Gus Reardon, number 9 overall for the year, Liam Draper, number 10 overall for the year, but Liam Draper is actually your XC2 champion, and Angus Reardon is second place in XC2 points, even though he will have a higher national number than Liam Draper, besides when you count the 1. Like, obviously, Liam Draper is going to have a number 1 plate. I do believe he's going to stay down and defend that. I don't know that, just saying it. I would just assume that is the plan and that is the intention going into next year. Don't know how the rest of that Yamaha team shapes up. Obviously, Ricky Russell will always be a contender for that title the way he's riding, or as long as he's riding like he is riding. But what's going to happen with Zacho? I think Zacho would be the first one to tell you that this year did not go exactly how he intended or how any of us thought that this year would go. I know that he told us that he signed a deal where he would race XC2 this year and then move into XC1 next year. I don't know if that is still the plan. I don't know. I've also heard rumblings and bumblings that maybe Zacho has other opportunities in other disciplines of the sport. I don't know. I guess that is yet to be seen and yet to be remained. But where does that leave Liam Draper on that scale? If Zacho still goes according to plan, moves up to XC1 next year, does Liam Draper move up to XC1 and ride that front row, or does he stay down and defend that number 1 plate? The last few champions that we've seen in the XC2 class have stayed down to defend that number 1 plate. I think looking back on it, I don't know if Johnny Gerard had an opportunity to defend the number 1 plate and was hurt, or if he just moved up. I don't know. if not him, then the last XC2 rider that we saw not defend that number one plate was Trevor Bollinger in 2016 when he won the title on Hondas and then moved directly into the XC1 class and did not defend that number one plate the next year. So I do not know Liam Draper's intentions. I'm just assuming that he's going to stay down and defend that number one plate, although it would be cool to see him move up and run in that XC1 class, because the same thing we talk about with all these XC2 debates, look at Craig DeLong. Craig DeLong is a completely different rider 2 years into this XC1 battle where he becomes the XC1 champion. So I think being up there on that front row, gaining that confidence, gaining that speed, being able to key off those guys and run with those guys, I think has turned him into a completely different rider. And I don't know. I wish there was just one pro row, or if there was another way to move out of that XC2 class. Since we did that episode, we have had 5 riders move into the XC1 class. Pretty proud of that. Pretty stoked on that. Don't know if it has any correlation with the show, but I do know that 5 XC2 riders have not moved into XC1 anytime in the past or anytime before we did that show talking about it. So maybe we had at least just a little bit of influence. The last person on that list to do it was Mike Wachowski this past weekend, which, as you saw in the YouTube video, the recap video that we have on our OTP YouTube page, looks like he went into the pits, had some rear of the bike issues. Not sure if it was shock, not sure if it was wheel, not sure what it was, but you saw him come in, put the bike on the stand, and that crew get to work. So this was Mike Wachowski's XC1 debut, which, rumor in the pits is that he will be moving up to that XC1 class full-time next year. Joining him will also be Ryder Lafferty, who we saw Ryder move up at the last round at Buckwheat and set the world on fire, ride all over the back wheel of Craig DeLong, all the way up until the very last bit of the very last lap. We saw Evan Smith make the move up. He's been riding that Beta 480 machine. He actually came down with an illness this past weekend, and so that's why he was unable to make it to the starting line this past weekend. He was at the track, but then just a rough illness ended up taking him out of the race on Sunday. Lyndon Snodgrass, who would have had to move up next year anyway because he missed the majority of the beginning of the season with an illness of his own. I think he self-promoted himself. He's like, well, I'm going to be riding the XC1 class for the rest of my career. I might as well move up and race it now. And I swear, there's one more, and I'm going through my head to try to think of it. I very sincerely apologize that I did not have this prepared, and for some reason I'm drawing a blank right now, but I believe there's one more XC2 rider that has moved into the XC1 class. But it could be going crazy. It might just be 4. So, yeah. Interesting to see how that XC1 Pro class will work next year, because we're not going to get fully into the silly season stuff. But the rumor through the pits is that some XC1 guys are actually going to be moving down to the XC2 class, which is counterintuitive to everything that we just talked about and everything that goes with that XC2 class. But when you got guys and you got teams that are paying full teams to race that XC2 row and paying XC1 money for XC2 riders, I think people are going to try to exploit that rule and take advantage of it. So it sounds like there are possibly 4, and not even the same 4, but there's possibly 4 XC1 riders that could regress and move backwards to the XC2 class. And when you look at it, why not? I mean, if people are making full salaries to race XC2, why wouldn't you go down there? Especially contingency for some of the manufacturers is the same to win XC1 as it is to win XC2. So I think that further puts emphasis that the rules should probably be changed. There probably should be some more stipulations between when you have to move to that XC1 class from the XC2 class and moving back down and vice versa. So, yeah, just throwing that out there. Maybe that's something that we can look into. Josh Toth, like both, came back, joined us on the 3 Hundo out there for racing. That was cool to see him out there having fun on the 300 machine, that all-white 7 gear. That 7 gear does look sick, especially in the woods. I don't know anybody else that rides 7 gear in the woods. But those are the couple of rants that we got to today. And now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the show. We're going to talk about the GNCC finale. And we're going to talk about Hare and Hound, where another champion was crowned on the West Coast. Before we get into that, though, Beta Motorcycles is the official manufacturer of On the Pipe podcast, but you already know that. Beta Motorcycles has been family owned and operated since 1905. They manufacture the finest enduro, trials, and dual sport motorcycles. They're known for their premium quality and their rideability. They are the best looking bikes on the market, and they back it up with their superior performance. Head over to betausa.com for more information on their available models and to find a dealer near you to get yours today. Now, speaking of Beta motorcycles, I happened to race a Beta motorcycle this past weekend, as you all may or may not know. It was an experience, to say the least. Not terribly happy with my performance, but I am wonderfully happy with that Beta machine and the Beta team for helping me out. I officially might have became the slowest factory rider to ever exist in the sport of dirt bike racing in any single discipline. The Beta boys, like I said, they're like my second family out there at the track. So I made the drive up from North Carolina. Didn't even have to worry about bringing a bike. Got there, had two different bikes to choose from: 484 stroke or a 252 stroke. Now the 252 stroke has been the filming rig. It's been the filming machine at the last few races. So I was like, I'm comfortable with it. It's lighter, and whatever bike I ride, I got to ride it for the pro race to be able to film and do stuff. So I picked the 250. And, had a good time. Went there. So, as everyone knows, I'm sure you could not log on to social media without seeing posts about J-Law and what J-Law was doing. So, Jason Lawrence made his triumphant return to racing after 13 years away from the sport. The first AMA race that he was back on the line for was none other than Ironman GNCC. So, that was a sick storyline of itself. And come all the way up until about 9 o'clock on Sunday morning, nobody had laid eyes on J-Law, so nobody knew if he was actually going to be there or not. Well, what do you know? J-Law did show up. He got on that Phoenix Honda machine, and he went to the starting line of the 10 a.m. race. The fourth row, it was the industry class, and that was the class that I raced as well. So I saw everyone lined up out there, and I said, you know what? I'm just racing for this whole shot picture. That is the only thing I want. So I lined up on the far inside, and I tried them all. I wanted to get that whole shot more than anything. That's all I had in me was a couple good turns, and then I was gonna be out. So that was the whole story in and of itself. I tried to get that Beta machine. I'm telling you, it'll start faster than anything I've ever seen in my life. But it started, and then J-Law kind of starts drifting over. So I lined up directly to the left of him, that made me the far inside guy. And we were kind of laughing and joking, and he told me, he's like, you're the only one inside of me, so you're the only one that stands a chance of still being up after the first corner, so I'm just going to go straight and take everyone out. I was like, yeah, that's exactly why I'm here. So I tried to do that same exact thing. But once we started going, I started in second, and he got a good jump too. And then he started drifting over towards me. So part of me is like, holy crap, this thing actually fired up, and I'm damn neck and neck with J-Law and everybody else right now. And then the other part of me is like, oh, my God, he's coming at me. And so in all of that, this is my first race since 2021. Like, it's been a minute. I haven't even put that much time on a bike in the past 2 years. Definitely haven't raced anything. So in that whole mental breakdown that's going on, I forget to shift. So I went second gear all the way to that corner. I think if I would have clicked third gear, I probably could have tucked it inside and been the first one around that corner. But I felt it rev all the way out in second. But by that point, I was already so close, I just had to hold it. So held it in second, and then in the second turn, I was hoping that everyone was going to blow it wide because it was a little bit dustier in that second turn. So I was hoping everyone was going to blow it wide. So I got on the brakes and tried to cut it up underneath the inside and get back in front. And I timed it good. I had the right idea. But then as soon as I went to get on the gas, my rear end stepped out a little bit, and I about high side. And then as I did that, it also tweaked my bad leg and tweaked my knee and my bad leg. So when that happened, I was like, all right, this put it all instantly in perspective. Like, my number one goal here is to be able to walk away after the end of this thing. Like, I don't want to hurt. I don't want to mess up my bad leg. I'm racing for absolutely nothing here. And so in the second corner to tweak my bad leg, that was my wake up call. You know what? Let's just chill out. Let's just have fun. Let's ride, have a good time, enjoy the moment. So that's exactly what I did. That being said, that track was rough. And that was in the 10 a.m. race. So that whole time I'm riding, first of all, there needs to be a Clydesdale class in addition to the industry class. I think I would probably qualify for that Clydesdale class. Needed a little bit stiffer springs on the 250. Now the 390, feel good on it. That's what I got. That's what I've been riding. But the 250 was a little bit soft. I'm not quite at my fighting weight anymore, and so that also made it kind of hard to push. But with the right set of tires, that Beta 250 will climb a brick wall. Like, if you got the right set of tires on, you could ride that thing up the side of your house and onto your roof. That thing loves technical stuff. That thing loves single track. That thing loves to climb anything that you can put in front of it. All the little log jumps and the rocks and stuff, jumping all of those. Went up Ironman Hill, breeze, no problem. But trying to push on that thing on a rough track, which obviously isn't the bike's fault, more of a suspension thing. But I mean, I'm like 210, and no stock bike comes sprung for a 210-pound fella. So, yeah, then we went into cruise mode, hanging out, popping wheelies, chatting with the fans, you know what I mean, having a good time. So after that first lap, I was like, man, if I do 2 hours of this, there's no way that I'm going to be worth a dang to get around this place and film the 3-hour race this afternoon. So I was one and done, finished the lap. Definitely no chance of quitting before I finished at least one lap. So I finished the lap, went back, ate some lunch, got ready to go back out for the pro race. But one of the coolest moments of the weekend, and there were a lot of cool moments of the weekend, but one of the coolest moments of the weekend, we were sitting on the starting line. And as I mentioned, I'm directly to the left of J-Law. J-Law is directly to my right. We're sitting there on the start line. Everyone's getting their bike warmed up. Everybody's doing their thing. I have a couple OTP stickers on my helmet. And so I'm sitting on the start line, and the anthem's about to play. My helmet is off. I put it on my handlebars, the handlebar facing J-Law. And there's some people standing around us. The Phoenix boys, Nick Vassy, and the other Phoenix mechanics are standing behind us. Carson and team is standing there, and then obviously bikes all around us and people walking by, talking to me. Shout out to everybody that came and said, what's up? Coming up, talking to J-Law, taking pictures of him. But then it's dead quiet, and all these people around, and the anthem starts. And it's right when the anthem starts, so everyone's quiet, everyone's paying attention, all the bikes are off. And we're standing there, and all of a sudden I hear, holy shit, bro, no way, that's you? And I look over, and it's J-Law, and he screams this, like louder than that, screams it on the starting line where it's dead quiet, and points at the OTP sticker on my helmet. I was like, yeah, dude, that's my podcast. He's like, no way, dude. He's like, I listened to that shit. And there was a few F-bombs in there, too. I don't normally like cussing on here. I try to keep it limited, but I had to. This is J-Law saying this in the dead quiet spot. And, like, I look over. I'm like, what in the world is happening right now? Like, surely he can't be talking about me. And I look back at those boys, and they're kind of laughing. And I don't know. It was just a really cool thing that you know the legend of J-Law, and you know how big of a deal it is coming out and racing this thing. So to have him recognize my brand, my podcast, whatever, and then call it out on the line like that and say that he listened, I don't know. Might be fangirling a little bit here, but I thought that was a really cool moment and a really cool part of my weekend. So I thought it was cool just to be able to be racing right next to him, but then for that was just icing on the cake as well. And when I say racing for myself, I'm using that term loosely. Obviously, I was more riding during the race. But that leads me back to my other point. Thank you guys so much for listening to the show. Thank you guys so much for your support of the show. We're through another race season, and we got all sorts of big stuff in the works, so we're going to slowly start releasing through this off season to be ready for next year. But I could not do any of this without you. None of this could be possible without you guys listening to this thing, and it means the world to me that you do, and it means the world we have your support over here at OTP. And it's weekends like this where kind of get down in the dumps and you're like, oh man, what's the point of this? Like, does anybody even listen? And then I go to Ironman, and dude, people I don't know are coming up saying that they love the videos, that they love the show. I got guys from Louisiana that are there wearing my shirts, guys in Kansas coming up and talking to me, guys recognizing me out in the woods. And so just everywhere I went, man, it was just a cool opportunity. There was another fella that was walking around, a young kid that was doing YouTube interviews and putting stuff on YouTube, and he recognized me, like said what's up and wanted a picture of me. And I don't know, it's things like that where it really shows me how big the show has grown and allows me to have pride in what we've built in this world. And granted, I am not accomplished in the dirt bike world. I'm not a former XC1 champion. I'm not even anywhere close to a local pro speed. I'm just a guy that fell in love with the sport, man. Like, I never touched a dirt bike until I was 21 years old, and when I was finally able to afford my own dirt bike and get into the sport myself, I dove in as headfirst as you could possibly get. And I look back, and I was 21 years old. I'll be 31 in just a couple of weeks. And so 10 years I've been in this world to go from not having a part of it at all to be at this point running this podcast, the biggest podcast in off-road, to do what we've done with the media side of things on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, on all that stuff, and to have the support and have people recognizing me at races and saying things to me at races. It means the absolute world to me, and that's the stuff that makes me hungry. That's the stuff that is fueling all of this growth that we plan to do in the next year. And I say up to something season, but it's bigger than that. We got a lot of stuff going on, and I can't wait to bring it to you. But without you guys, none of this would be possible, and it blows my mind how many people listen to this thing. And it's not just all the fans coming up to me. It's talking to the riders. It's talking to the team guys. I mean, there were several mechanics I talked to. There was team managers that I talked to. There was a team manager that pulled me to the side and yelled at me for talking crap about him on the last episode, but it turned into a good conversation because we got everything out in the open. But even for that to happen, like, that was everyone else would look at it as a negative. I looked at it as a positive. I mean, it's something that I had the courage to come on here and say, so it's something that I saw, truly believed in. I saw something that the public saw, and it was a team manager that heard it and came up and approached me and talked to me directly about it, and I think we left on good terms, and I think that kind of helped to kind of see each other's side and talk about it, but that was just the one negative thing. But like I said, talking to riders, talking to ex-riders, talking to the DeLong brothers, talking to, like I said, the mechanics, the crews, the riders, the people, the fans, and everybody in between, man. It really blows my mind what we've been able to build in this little over 6 years, and I appreciate each and every single one of you for listening. And another thing that made me realize how many people actually listen to this stupid show is how many messages I got about Thad Duvall riding a Triumph, how many phone calls I got about Thad Duvall's Triumph deal. And after I got another call last week, I texted Thad. I was like, yo, how much have you heard about this Triumph deal? And he texted me back, said way too many. And I talked to him a little bit at the track. And I don't know, it's just funny how one little thing gets said on here and just spreads like wildfire throughout the community. So that was just another one of those examples, like, dang, like, we actually do have a lot of people listening on here. So I couldn't be more thankful for that. Unfortunately, the Thad Duvall Triumph rumor was a little bit of us being facetious. We were on the live Instagram thing the other day, and Stu chimed in right when I was on my rant about Thad and the injuries and how tough he is for coming back. And then Stu commented on there, Thad going to Triumph for 2024 XC2. And that's when I just read his comment and like agreed with it because I thought it was pretty clear that that was a joke. Turns out there was a lot of people that did not think that was a joke. So I don't know. This is just one of those funny situations. See how quickly something spread throughout the race world here. But yeah, that's my rant on that. I had an awesome time. I mean, simple as just being able to race the industry class. If you would have told me my first full season of GNCC was 2016, my buddy Brandon Peterson and Dustin Simpson and I, we went to all of the races. And that is when I didn't know any of the pro riders. Excuse me. I met a lot of the pro riders that year. I was taking photos. I was doing that whole thing. And, like, I remember the first pro rider that used my photo for something. I remember when JCR Honda made my photo their page's profile photo. I remember when someone stole one of my photos and Thad Duvall called him out and told him to tag me in the photo. I remember every single race recap, it was the pro guys posting my photos. And it's crazy to think that that was in 2016, and then now, like, I'm happy to call these dudes my friends. And it's just cool to see where it's come from the sport. But even, like I said, to be able, if you would have told me in 2016 while I was racing C-Class in the morning race that in a few years, I'll be racing industry class next to J-Law and, like, hanging out with underneath one of the factory rigs and stuff. And there's no way I would have believed it. So I'm very thankful for everything that dirt bikes has given me, and it goes to pretty much everything in my life. All my friends, all my buddies, the house that I live in, my shop right here on Main Street, the business, the screen printing business that I own because of this, the podcast business that I own doing this, like all of this stuff comes from dirt bikes, and it comes from this whole racing family. So thank you guys for that. Sorry, I know that this is way too much of a rant, but it's a little bit late. It's almost midnight. I'm getting delusional, so I apologize if I'm mumbly, jumbly. I've had a ton of stuff going on, so that's why I was able to just now get to the show. But I wanted to make it a good one because it is an important one, and here I am rambling. But anyway, let's get right back into it. Let's talk about the results. Let's talk about the race, the racing action, the very last race of the 2023 season. We mentioned Buckwheat was absolutely insane because the top 3 XC1 riders were wheel to wheel to wheel to wheel, and then the top 3 XC2 riders were wheel to wheel to wheel to wheel, and it was an absolutely absurd race. I mentioned on here that it was one of my favorite races to watch, one of my favorite races to film, one of the most memorable races because the racing action was so tight. Now fast forward to this one with so much on the line, with this being the final round of racing. Each and every single one of these riders has a different thing they're riding for, whether it's a bonus, whether it's for a ride, whether it's for a potential championship. Every single one of these riders had something to ride for, and the top 8 XC1 riders were within a minute and 15 seconds of each other. That is right. From first place down to 8th place, it was only a gap of a minute and 15 seconds, including the top 6 riders being in the same minute. It is absurd. Literally, 2 hours, 41 minutes, the top 6 riders all within the same minute. And then Jordan Ashburn and Craig DeLong. Actually, Jordan Ashburn was in the 241s as well. So the top 7 riders all in the same minute, and then Craig DeLong just 15 seconds outside of that. 42:15 was Craig DeLong in that 8th place spot. So the top 8 guys, a minute and 15 seconds off of each other after 3 hours of racing out there on that rough track with a lot of lines, with a lot of lappers, and a lot of stuff going on. It was absolutely insane. But when the checkered flag flew, there was an Australian out in front. It was the number 17 of Josh Strang, followed by the number 2 of Stuart Baylor, and the number 3 spot went to Johnny Gerard, rounding out the overall podium. So all of those positions were swapping back and forth. You make one mistake, 2 guys are getting by you. We saw everyone lead laps. It felt like we saw Ben Kelly work his way out to the front and lead laps. We saw Jordan Ashburn lead laps. We saw Craig DeLong lead laps. We saw Stu Baylor in the lead. We saw Josh Strang lead lap. It was insane. It was an insane race. You can check out my highlights from everything that I saw on YouTube. Once again, the On the Pipe Podcast YouTube channel. But when you look at this, I don't think I've ever been more excited to see somebody win a race than I was to see Josh Strang win that race this past weekend. Now, obviously, Stu Baylor and Craig DeLong had the championship on the line, but when you come down to it, you got Stu Baylor in hot pursuit with Josh Strang out in front. Obviously, Stu, good friend of the show, good friend of mine. That was a race, same thing with Craig. It was a race that it was like, man, may the best man win. Like, I think the fans wish it was closer. I think Craig DeLong probably doesn't wish that it was any closer than it was. But Craig DeLong getting top 13 with the season that he's had, it seemed pretty probable, especially as you start getting into the end of the race. And so with that championship up in the air, I don't really think that I could have picked a side. I just wanted to see the racing happen. But when the championship was all but decided with Craig DeLong running in that 8th spot, even with Stu in 2nd, I'm not going to lie. I know me here is supposed to be unbiased, but I was hoping that Josh Strang was going to hold on and get that. Obviously, Stu running his own team, money on the line. I'm sure he wanted that win bonus, but Josh Strang needed that win. Everything that he's gone through, everything that we talked about in the last show, and just everything that he's at in this point of his career. like I said, I don't think I've ever been happier to see somebody win a race than I was Josh Strang this past weekend. You see the absolute raw emotion that was in himself and also his wife Cam at the finish line. There's no faking that, like, at all. I mean, just pure raw emotion, and what a great ride, what an excellent ride, and what a time to get that win. Josh Strang ended on the overall podium at the Buckwheat with a third-place finish, and then he comes back and gets a win to close out his 17th season in America Racing in that number 1 spot, and tied his team manager, Fred Andrews, with 25 career wins. That is 5th place all-time on the GNCC wins list. And now that Josh Strang said it on the podium, we can go ahead and talk about it. I want to do something this offseason about the free agents. We talk about silly season. We talk about who's signing where, who's jumping teams, who's going to what. This year, aside from all the team swaps, aside from people, maybe teams changing manufacturers, riders changing team, aside from all of that, one of the biggest things going into this year's silly season and this year's off season is the amount of guys that don't have rides, that don't have anything lined up, the amount of free agents that are out there right now. And I think at the top of that list is none other than Josh Strang. And he did say on the podium publicly that his tenure with that Babbitt's Online Monster Energy Kawasaki team will be coming to an end. He mentioned 5 years ago he helped start that team, and we mentioned on the show before that 5 years ago you didn't see the Kawasaki's in the woods like you see now. And Strang has been on the ground floor of that program, building it up ever since Cowie made the factory return back into the off-road world. So, unfortunately, that is now coming to an end, as Josh Strang alluded to on the podium. And at this point, with all the rides spoken for and with all the teams having limited capacities and some teams going away, it seems that Josh Strang would be on the top of that free agent list as we head into next year. So Josh Strang is 35 years old, confirm that. He's in his 17th season, going into his 18th season. But remember a little bit ago when we mentioned there was 2 riders in the top 20 that have finished in the top 20 every single race. One is your overall champion, Craig DeLong. The second rider is the number 17 of Josh Strang. He was the only other rider from that front row to finish inside the top 20 all year long. Not only that, you want to talk about age, you want to talk about this, that, and the other. That does not matter. It is irrelevant when you look at what he was able to do this year. He was able to get several podiums. He got a podium earlier in the season. He ended the season with a podium at round number 11 and then a win in round number 12. Like we mentioned, the closest race of the year, 8 riders in the hour or in a minute and 15 seconds of each other. So it's not like everyone wasn't there. It's not like people crashed out. It is the highest level that these guys have rode to all year long, and at the front of that lead pack was Josh Strang. Josh Strang has been on the podcast several times before, and he's always remained consistent that as long as he feels competitive and feels like he can win, he's going to be around the sport. And so to be in this situation, to be trying to find a ride, to not know what is going on next year, to not have to have all this uncertainty going into next year is absolutely insane. When you look at him being a former overall champion, you look at him being a title contender, you look at him as the only other person besides a champion to win or to be in the top 20 at every single round, and then to go out and get several podiums on the year and to close the year off with a win in probably the most competitive race of the season with championships on the line. How do you deny that someone like Josh Strang does not have a ride going into the 2024 season? It is absolutely appalling. It blows my mind, and I'm hoping that with a podium finish and a win to close out the year, that people are going to take notice of that, and that some teams are going to be looking for a guy that can still win and know that Josh Strang is one of those guys that can still win, as he proved this past weekend. So, as we mentioned, Stuart Baylor Jr. would hold on to get that number 2 spot right on the heels of Josh Strang, and then rounding out your overall podium with a triumphant return to the podium, it was none other than J.G. Ripa, Johnny Gerard. Last race at the Buckwheat, he had hand, foot, and mouth disease, so that is why he ended up not racing. Looked pretty unbearable. Face swollen, all sorts of stuff going on. So he comes back and gives them foot, boot, ass disease, and gets on the overall podium with a third-place finish on the year. Grant Baylor in the number 4 spot, just off of the overall podium. Ricky Russell rounding out your top 5. Ben Kelly in the number 6 spot, the reigning defending champion. The last time he'll be running the number 1 plates until he's able to get back up there and do it again. Jordan Ashburn would finish in the number 7 spot, and Craig DeLong would bring home 8th place on his way to bringing home that overall championship. Linda Snodgrass in 9th, and Josh Toth would round out your top 10 overall fastest riders. So that is the way that XC2 class shaked up, and I guess shook up would be the word to use there. And then we look down at the XC2 class and continued Aussie domination. Angus Reardon would go out there and do his part, do everything that he could. That was another championship that was on the line, but pretty well sealed up. Liam Draper had a very comfortable lead coming in, but he still races hard to that number 2 place finish on the day to claim that XC2 championship. And then Grant Davis puts it all together, makes it happen, and gets on the XC2 overall podium in his rookie year. So Grant Davis up on the box, Liam Draper in second, and Angus Reardon clicking off another win. 9th place overall was Angus Reardon. As we mentioned, he was on his way to those to the XC or the I think a 9th place finish in the overall results for the year as well. So now we take a look down at our XC3 class. Jack Walker, that is JHAK, Jack Walker, would take the win pretty commandingly. 8.5 minutes. In the number 1 spot, Drew Calloway, local, he would end the day in 2nd place overall. And then Matthew Sims would be 3rd place in that XC3 class. Jack Walker getting it done on a Husqvarna, but he will be joining the Beta Factory Racing Beta team next year for that XC3 class. So he'll be on a Beta 125 next year. So hopefully we can keep this momentum rolling and keep that Beta on top in that XC3 class. We take a look now at our top amateurs of the race. JoJo Cunningham is an absolute freak of nature. He is a little pit bull, and I don't know how he does it. He told me all the surgeries he had. I knew he rebroke his femur at the beginning of the year. We all knew that. It was within 2 weeks of me rebreaking my leg, he rebroke his femur. Apparently, he had other surgeries and other injuries other than that as well, but he still comes back, and after all that, wins top amateur honors this past weekend for the race, and also wraps up the 250A championship. So missing the first 3 rounds with a broken freaking femur, he still comes back and wins a 250A title in the same exact year that he broke his femur for the second time. Absolutely absurd. Kudos to JoJo Cunningham. You are a freak of nature. I also met his girlfriend's dad, who's a big fan of the show. So shout out to him, because that was cool as well. In the number 2 spot was none other than the Myrtle Beach transplant, the real-life Tyrannosaurus Rex, Nick DeFeo. Nick DeFeo, your 4-stroke A-Lights champion on the year. I believe with a 2nd-place top am finish this past weekend, he also wrapped up the top amateur overall for the year. So Nick DeFeo, a force to be reckoned with. He keeps getting better and better. I think he's going to be a dangerous fella in years to come as well. So Nick DeFeo, your 2023 overall amateur for the GNCC series. And then rounding out the top 3 was another local, Mike DeLosa, was able to get it done. 3rd place overall, 3rd place in 250A, as those boys were all ripping as well. Taking a look down to the morning race, the WXC class, Rachel Archer, still with a mangled foot, goes out there and takes yet another win to add to her dominant WXC championship campaign that she has had this year. Corey Steed would be in the number 2 spot, and Preston Rains would round off another WXC podium this year. So that is the way your WXC shook up. Rachel Archer, Corey Steed, and Preston Rains. Also, another thing to point out in that 10 a.m. amateur race, other than me almost getting the whole shot on J-Law, and the WXC class doing what they did, Cole Richardson, the Cole Train, the XC1 Pro Rider, he went out there and raced the morning race as well and got 30th place overall on bikes. So cool to see some crossover. We saw Hunter Hart used to race quads and bikes every single weekend and do pretty well. So it was cool to see Cole Richardson get out there on a bike on Sunday and ride his way to 30th place overall in that 10 a.m. race. So I'm sure I missed some storylines, but at least we got all the results. That was the GNCC that happened out here in Crawfordsville, Indiana. We're going to take it all the way across the country to the left coast and talk about a little bit of racing action that went on out there. This year's ISDE is only like a couple weeks away from happening. A lot of the ISDE riders are going to be West Coast riders this year. So you'll notice a lot of these names are sounding familiar, but Hare and Hound was happening this past weekend. It was the season finale of the Hare and Hound series out there, and that reminds me that there was also a enduro cross, so we'll get that keyed up and ready to go as well. But yeah, so in the Hare and Hound race, we're going to look at that, and it was, I was looking to tell you where it took place at, but it doesn't say. Anyway, so Dalton Shirey, shout out Dalton Shirey. He went out there and got the overall win. So reigning defending champion, number 1 plates on his bike. He wraps up not only the race, but on that Rockstar Husky, he takes home the Hare and Hound overall championship. So Rockstar Husky taking home 2 overall championships on the same weekend, from the left coast to the right coast, from Craig DeLong to Dalton Shirey. Good weekend for Rockstar Husky. I'm sure there's going to be a party around the pits, party back at the factory out in California for the Rockstar Husky boys. In the number 2 spot, it was Zane Roberts aboard a Beta USA machine. So Zane Roberts would end the day 2nd place overall. And then Clayton Roberts would be your 3rd place finisher on the day, rounding out your pro class overall podium. Only one 250 pro rider this round. And it was Nick Colangeli that would win the 250A class. The Pro 250 class. I got that confused because the very next rider in the overall, 6th place overall, was Dale Fenton out of the 250A class. So maybe Dale should sign up 250 Pro. You know what I mean? Maybe he would have had that little bit of extra motivation. Maybe he could have knocked off Nick Colangeli. I don't know. But either way, what an impressive ride by the 250A rider of Dale Fenton, finishing right on the heels of the 250 Pro class winner. So that was pretty cool to see. Noticed that when I was looking through results, and actually spoke with Dale a little bit on the interwebs on Instagram. So hopefully we get some West Coast guys on the show. Want to hear from them, talk to them, so we don't sound like a complete idiot when we're talking about these races out there. When we look down at the Pro Women's Rider, or the Pro Women's class, it was Ty Woolslayer that grabbed the WXC class win. Ashley Gage would be the 2nd fastest overall and in that women's class. And then rounding out your women's class pro podium, I'm looking forward to the actual results because I cannot read my own handwriting. It's Rachel Sophia. I don't think that's right. Hold on. I literally can't read my own handwriting, so I got to look it up. But I got it right in front of me. Don't worry about it. Rachel Stout. Okay, I see it now. Rachel Stout. Everyone knows Rachel Stout. She's legit. 3rd place in the women's pro class. So Ty Woolslayer, Ashley Gage, and Rachel Stout. Dalton Shirey wrapping up the championship once again, back-to-back years. Zane Roberts in the number 2 spot on that Beta machine. Clayton Roberts rounding out your top riders overall. Now, we take a look at the 2nd round of enduro cross riding. And I knew that Johnny Walker is doing Johnny Walker things. Johnny Walker remains unbeaten on the season. That is right. 6 motos have been raced, and Johnny Walker has won all 6 of them. So he goes 1-1-1 for the 2nd round in a row to take the overall win aboard that factory racing Beta machine with the double deuces on it. Still don't know why he's not running the number 1, but we'll have to ask him and find out. In the number 2 spot, it was Cody Webb on the Sherco machine that would end the weekend 2nd place overall. And then Ryder LeBlond making his way onto the overall podium with a 5th, 3rd, 4th, in the 3 motos to end up 3rd place overall on the weekend. So that is Endurocross, that is National Hare and Hound, and that is a recap of the Ironman GNCC. If there's any storylines or anything I left out, feel free to shoot me a message and let me know. I think we covered a lot of stuff. And as always, man, I know I harped on it. I know I went on a rant about it, but I can't thank you all enough for listening to the podcast and all the kind words that happened this weekend. It really was a really cool experience just to be able to hear so much feedback. And like I said, keep an eye out. We got some stuff on the way. Very excited to tell you all about it, and very excited to move into another season of racing, even though this one is not even completely over yet. This weekend, though, another series will be wrapping up. The Mid-East Hare Scramble Series will be happening in Hickory, North Carolina. It is the biggest pro payouts of the year. So if you're hanging out, you're listening to this, and you want to make some money this weekend, you better put Wilson's Airport in Hickory, North Carolina in your GPS and head on up here on Sunday, because the pro purse is the largest that it will be all year long. The pro bike payout, $3,000 to win, $1,500 for second, $1,000 for third, $900, $800, $700, $600, $500, $400, $300 to round out the top 10. So I think it's a $12,000 pro purse, $3,000 to the winner, $1,500 to second place, and $1,000 to the third place rider. And if you're like, I don't want to go up there and not get in the big money, keep in mind this is also the season finale of National Enduro that is going on in Alabama as well. So a lot of our Mid-East pros are the ones that we see out there racing a lot, and the ones that would be in this money are all going to be at the National Enduro. So last year, Stu Baylor won this race over Caleb Russell. Stu will be at the National Enduro. Jonathan Johnson, Brody Johnson, Trevor Bollinger, and then some of the other guys I'm not sure about. But that's where you know the factory boys are going to be at the National Enduro. So come out here and race for the big cash in Hickory, North Carolina at the Mid-East Hare Scramble. I will be there on the microphone announcing all weekend. Hopefully we'll have some shirts and everything there. I'm in the process of making some shirts. The fall line is designed. I know I said I was going to put it up Monday. We're going to get that up ASAP. I just want to make sure that we're ready to go once we get it up there, so there's not a whole lot of lead time. And, be a friend, tell a friend. If you like the podcast, let somebody know about it. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for the continued support. And, we will see you probably tomorrow.